Welcome to What's in the Box, episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna,
And I'm Eric.
and today we are going to be discussing one of, in my opinion, the best werewolf movies, An American Werewolf in London.
Probably one of the best horror movies, especially
Mm,
from the 80s.
yeah, yeah. What year did it come out?
I
I
think
meant to
81.
81. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can. Oh, I don't know why that Texas AuthorCon picture there is showing. Maybe you can. There we go. Cut that part out now.
Yeah. What's funny is we should have used getting back on the horse. We haven't done an episode in so long. I
Yeah,
just now thought we should have pulled out the questionnaire for movies
yeah.
and tried to sync up a little bit. I honestly, after doing all those interviews, it just feels weird to slide back into doing this. But we'll have an episode. We should have already the shapeshifter episode on the book will
Yep.
be out already, and then this one will come out. So hopefully by the end of this episode, we're kind of up and running again.
Yeah, and this is a little bit different too because we were doing a lot of
Yeah.
book than the movie. Now we did a book for our last episode, Shapeshifter, and this is a totally different movie because, as far as I know, there is no novelization of American Werewolf in London.
Well, when I watched it today, and I haven't seen it in a while, but I've always enjoyed this movie.
Mm,
But it immediately made me think of this is a love letter or an homage to the Wolfman.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't think there is. I think this is his way of getting a Wolfman picture done in the early 80s.
yeah.
And I know I read some of the backup stuff with Landis, and he wrote some of it's based off of a story that he wrote as a teenager, which is where the nurse comes in. And
Mm,
some of it is based off of when he was working on a TV show in the 70s, early 70s. He was they were in now I can't even say it. Was it Yugoslavia?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I
right.
can't say it.
I know, right? So
Yugoslavia,
there you go.
Yugoslavia.
And he was driving down a road that made him think of the beginning, the opening of this movie. And so then it kind of started to come together, but you can see the heavy influence that the Wolfman had,
Yeah.
especially in the references. And I mean, they go out of their way to mention the Wolfman and the Hammer horror version, even in passing, but they do pay a little homage to the 60s Wolfman, that
Mm,
Oliver Reed was in.
yeah. And so we have our main character, David, and then
Uh-huh.
his buddy Jack. Now, what kind of vibe did you get from David and Jack? Did you get they're just college kids? And
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Because I started thinking about this. Of course, it came out in 81. I probably saw it when I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna say 10. So that would put it at 85. Um, And so I didn't think of it, but as I was watching it, I watched it on Friday, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, I got we're college kids, in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
backpacking, um, vibe from David and Jack. But then there's this nurse who's an established nurse, and she's got her own flat. She doesn't have a roommate, so she's like been a nurse for a while. So then it kind of like switched for me because David then seemed to be like he's not in college. He like maybe is just on a vacation with his friend and
The way
he's
I kind
older.
of read it, because he says we have 3 months. So I kind of
Yeah.
was thinking he's not going into college. This is like maybe junior, senior year of college because they're
Yeah.
more mature. They're definitely more
Yeah.
mature. But he said 3 months. So I
Yeah.
thought maybe this was a summer, like a summer trip that they
Mm,
did. And this is how they're going to kick off the last year of college. Or
yeah.
maybe they're celebrating the last year of college. But yeah, they're definitely not going into college. These are older
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally with you there. But yeah, no, I got college student vibe that they're
Yeah.
going to have a good time. And Jack wanted to go to Italy, but David convinced him to do this first.
Yeah. Good job, David.
And what's funny? I was reading, and I didn't know this, but Landis is the guy who wrote and directed it. He did Animal House,
Yep.
and the studio wanted this to be um John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd.
Really?
And can you imagine
No,
the movie? I mean, there's just no way there's no way they pull it off
no.
as the way it is. It would be way more comedic, I think.
Hmm.
Or maybe this is one of those cases where you get two funny people that you automatically gravitate towards comedy, and then they get to do more of a serious role.
Serious role. Yeah.
And maybe we think of it differently then. But the fact that that's what they were shooting for, I think it's a blessing that they were tied up with another project and that he was forced to kind of go with no name people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Griffin Dunn or Dune, I don't know how you say that, as Jack. I think he was perfect for Jack.
Yeah, he's really good as Jack.
Just throughout the movie as he's decaying,
Hmm.
um, and even as when he's not dead and they're just walking and before they get to the slaughtered lamb, um, he was kind of quirky and funny and the
They have
not
a
as
very good,
serious. Yeah.
yeah, they have a very good vibe of friends, that
Yep.
banter, and they're
Hmm.
very comfortable with each other, and it comes across.
Yeah.
And they do,
I
but
could
they both do a really good job with that.
Yeah, they had a great vibe and I could see them as being actual friends off
Mhm.
screen, you
Yeah,
know. Whether or not they actually were, I don't know, but I could totally see that because they
yeah.
just seemed very natural with each other, you know.
And what's funny is they both, Jack seemed more pragmatic, and David so optimistically naive about everything.
Yeah,
That's also another thing that they did really well, that they're so two sides of the same coin kind of thing,
yep,
and they really complemented each other well.
hmm,
Um,
yeah. I love the slaughtered lamb. I love this sign.
yeah, it's a cool
It's
sign.
it's a cool sign.
And it
And
definitely
Jack's,
should have given them more pause. I mean, it did. Jack's
yeah,
like, what are we
Jack's like,
doing?
what the hell kind of place is this?
Yeah.
Where's the lamb?
And I think the movie opens so well.
Yeah,
Just it throws us right into it. We don't really get too much setup. A little bit while they're walking, so we kind of get the reason why they're there. He doesn't waste any time with the movie. He gets us right into the action. We don't have to worry too long before we're going to get to see some cool stuff. And
yeah,
I like the it's we go back and we've discussed werewolf stuff now for a while, and we've taken a short break with all the interviews. But I mean, just he does such a this is a great movie because it does pay you know attention to the past, and it does a
hmm,
really good job of recognizing the movies that have come before it and kind of tipping its cap to it. But
yeah,
it gives us a lot of newer things too, and I just think this is a really well done movie.
yeah. And I totally could see the slaughtered lamb being an actual pub in a
Hmm.
small, you know,
Sure.
English town, village, whatever. I could totally see that. And it actually wouldn't surprise me if there was actually, had been one and um
Yeah,
back
like they
then.
didn't need to really dress one up, they just kind of came across it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I could see that.
And then we have our patrons at the slaughtered lamb and we can see the what did they call it?
Five
Pentacle,
pointed. Yeah,
pentacle or something pentacle.
should
Um
be a pentagram though, right? But they
yeah,
call it something different.
yeah, the pentacle,
Yeah.
something like that. Um and usually that's a symbol for devil worship, but in this instance they were saying it was a way to ward off the
Well,
werewolf.
it's a sign of the werewolf. If you go back to the original Wolfman, when he becomes the werewolf, it
Right.
forms on his palms to show that he's cursed. So I don't know if they're saying that this is there because the town is cursed or the people in this specific area is cursed. But
Mm,
yeah, the whole point is that it's a sign of the werewolf, which is him paying homage to Wolfman.
yep.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a constant reminder for the town to realize that they had this hanging over them.
Yeah.
And
Which is
they were
kind of,
shocked. They were
yeah.
shocked when that door opened and the two
Yep.
guys walk in. So
Yeah, and they're just like silence. And the guy missed his dart. I think he's the next picture. Oh no, it's the bartender there.
yeah, she's the only one that seemed to care that
Yeah.
they had strangers and that something terrible was going to happen. and she did her best to protect him, but you
Mhm.
could tell that it wasn't going to matter. That the
Yeah, but she didn't start off that way though.
Yeah, she was standoffish,
She
but
was very like, no, we don't have any. No, we don't have that. Um, do you have you can we have some tea? Do you have any? And she's like, no, but I could
yeah,
make some, and then she brings them this tea to warm them up, you know. But yeah, she was the only one that cared. She's like, you can't leave them, you have to go to
it's
them.
so the question is, do you think it's just one werewolf in the town, like one at a time? Because when we get a little bit later on, they do shoot the wolf that attacks the guys, and they're
Yeah,
all there, so they're all human. They obviously didn't change, but they know that there's a curse of a werewolf there. So it felt like there should have been more werewolves.
yeah. No, I got the feeling that there was just one.
Yeah, because I mean
Uh,
that's how it ties
yeah,
into to free the ghosts at the end,
yeah,
but it just felt weird that they all knew that there was one werewolf. They obviously had to have known who the werewolf was in this
right.
town. So this could have been a 5-minute movie. Could
Yeah,
have been the townsfolk going over there and shooting the guy,
yeah.
but for
Pitchforking
some
him.
reason they didn't. So for
Yeah,
some reason they have this long going tradition of protecting the werewolf, I guess.
yeah. There's the guy
That's
that was playing darts.
Yeah, and later tells us um, the boy should never have been allowed to leave.
Yeah,
That they should have kept him.
yeah,
Which I wonder why they didn't do that. I mean, I guess well, the one's dead, and the other
yeah,
one you could just simply take and say, "Listen, this is it. This is how this goes now."
yeah. I
Keep him
mean,
locked up for a month, and then when he changes, then he realizes he's a werewolf, and
yeah,
that's that.
just
So
just kill him.
yeah, or just put a bullet in his head, however you
Yeah,
want to do it. But they
exactly.
didn't,
Um,
which I'm glad they didn't, because I mean, yes, we're
yeah,
gonna pick apart some of the little story flaws, but I mean, it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, it is a werewolf movie, so you have to suspend a little bit. So
yeah, yeah. And you have to have a werewolf to have a werewolf movie.
that's right.
Dr. Hirsch, uh,
He was an interesting character.
he definitely was. Because he went from like, you know, typical doctor, here, take your meds, blah, 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 to I'm going to go to this remote town and talk to these people
Mhm.
and then come back and, you know what? David's a werewolf.
And while he explains it, he's like, well, obviously he's not a real werewolf, but this whole town has bought into this psychosis.
Yeah,
He's going to buy into the psychosis. Therefore, he will think he is a werewolf. And then we need to find him just so he protect himself. But the fact that he's even in that area of thought is
yeah,
amazing, especially in the early 80s,
yeah,
you would think they would just say this guy's crazy and then let's lock him in the loony bin.
yeah. Let's send him back home and they can lock him up over in America.
Yeah.
You know, so the one person I absolutely detested was the guy from the American
Yeah. Which
consulate,
I think we were
whatever,
supposed to.
the
I think we were
embassy.
supposed to.
Yeah,
Yeah. He was
he's
such a,
like, Mr. Kessler, there's no reason to be upset. The dude was just attacked. His best friend was just ripped apart. Like, he's gonna be
yeah.
a little upset.
Yeah. It's okay to be a little testy.
And he's like, I gave the police permission to speak to you. Like,
Yeah. It was that. Okay.
all right. But yeah, I was like, you know what? Just go home. Just leave. Just get out of here. I did not like that character. Good thing he was only there for like one scene and it was only like
Yeah.
a couple minutes. Um,
But again, and it just shows how good Landis is at writing these and directing them, because there's such a nice level of comedy throughout the whole movie, but it's never excessively silly.
all right.
It's always a little awkward, a little.
Just
It's
little
silly when it's
breaks.
supposed to be, but it's
Yeah.
never. And the movie, while not taking itself seriously, never winks at the camera. And I appreciate how he was able to weave the story and still have us have those really tense moments, but then have some good, he just knew all the right notes to play. So
Yeah. And of course, the lovely Alex, the nurse. And I guess, a typical fantasy for a guy, I guess, a nurse.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I
Uh,
guess. I mean, uh,
but
and that was a weird situation too. The two nurses, and the way the doctor talked to the nurses and stuff.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, okay, it was the 80s. So things like things were different back then. But I'm just thinking if a doctor happened to walk in and hear a nurse say, "Yeah, I checked out this patient's junk while he was unconscious,"
Yeah, that
she'd
might be a frowned upon.
probably be fired,
Yeah.
or at least written up or something. And he was just like, "Go back to work." And like he clearly,
Yeah, he
basically,
heard.
yeah, he heard. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was just like, but yeah, he definitely. I was a little irked when Alex was going, "Yes, doctor, yes, doctor, yes, doctor." Like, I don't know, maybe it's because I work with doctors and I refuse to call them doctor. Like all the doctors that I work with, I call them by their first names. Um, and but that's just because, I don't know, I'm not a nurse. I don't work,
Right.
in that kind of capacity with a doctor. So I guess there is supposed to be some level of respect between a doctor and a nurse, and you
You would
know,
think so, but we didn't get it both ways because the doctor was very short with both
yeah,
nurses
yeah,
until later. He's a
definitely.
little nicer to Alex later,
Yeah.
but and you can definitely see. I think really what we're looking at is the fantasy of a teenage boy. Like I said earlier, he
Yeah.
wrote some of this or came up with some of this when he was younger. Landis did, so maybe that's just imprinted on him
Hmm.
from earlier when he was, a younger guy looking into different things that he was into. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it makes sense. She needs to be a nurse because how else can you justify them getting a
Meeting.
bond,
Yeah.
meeting and having a bond, forming that bond, and then
Yeah.
being able to put him in her home that
Yeah.
quickly? Um, and then these wolves, apparently, some guy in the UK owned like 4 or 5 wolves
Oh,
and he
okay.
would rent them out to things. I read that somewhere too. So again, it's the same wolves that are in the enclosure at the zoo.
Yeah.
They're actually from this guy's
Yeah.
collection.
Nice. And the famous and wonderful transformation scene, his
Yeah,
first transformation.
I clicked a whole bunch of these just so we could kind of go through
Yeah.
and what's so funny is that because we discussed a lot of this in the Howling episode when we did the
Hmm.
movie,
Yeah.
because the guy that designed both werewolves is the same, it's Rick Baker. And he was hired to do this. They had no money. So then he had to go and then he got hired to do the Howling. And apparently Landis got money while he was working on the Howling and he called him up and said, "Hey, time to go to work." And he's like, "Oh, I'm already working on a werewolf picture." And so then he got really upset with the guy. The guy leaves that movie, leaves his assistant in charge, and comes back to American Werewolf in London, where he wins. Doesn't I think he wins an Oscar, an Academy Award for best makeup
Mm.
and special effects or something. So it's a good idea that he moved back. But for apparently the guy that designed everything, he wanted it to be more like the Howling Werewolves. We discussed how they're, on 2 legs, but
Right.
Landis wanted a traditional 4-legged kind of beast. So
Yeah.
apparently they butted heads a lot
Hmm.
over the whole design thing.
Yeah. I just love this transformation, and it didn't feel. It took a while
Mm-hmm.
for the transformation, but it didn't feel like an eternity like the Howling.
Right.
That
Didn't feel
one's,
unnatural.
yeah. Um, there
And
was one part.
I was
Mhm.
gonna say, I assume it because it was the first time he changes, it took a little longer. And then as
Maybe.
you would change,
Yeah.
maybe you would get more, your body would be more used to it. But
Yeah.
either way, I thought they handled it really well in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. The only part I had a little bit of an issue with was when he was on his back and he had like the really big hands and the really big
Yeah.
feet, and his like stomach was like concave, and I don't know, it kind of looks. It reminded me of a hairy turtle on its back. You know how turtles get on their
Yeah.
back and they can't flip over? Uh, so that was kind of a little funny to me, and it kind of took me out of the scene just a little bit. Um, because it just looked not as smooth as the
Right.
rest of the transformation.
And
I'll put
yet
it that way.
we're talking about 1981,
Yeah.
no CGI at all. So it's amazing the way that they were
Hmm.
able to do everything they were able to do. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah, that was a great scene. And I loved the part where you could see it ramping up.
Yeah.
Like he was laying on the bed and then he went to the fridge and he's like, oh, I'm not hungry. And then he would try to read and then went back to the fridge and he's like, oh, I'm not still not hungry. And then he just like lost his shit. He's like, I am so hot. And then he like that's what it started. So you could see the ramp up to the
Yeah, the
change.
unexpected nature. And an interesting point that I read about Landis was that he wanted it to be like the original Wolfman and some of the earlier werewolf pictures where the guy that becomes the wolf is the victim.
Hmm.
They're not like in the Howling, they're the villains and they're
Yep.
becoming werewolves to be villains.
Right.
They
Yeah.
embrace what they are. In this one and Wolfman and Curse of the Wolfman, they're all the victim of having this curse thrust upon them. And
Yeah.
none of them want to be a werewolf or want to go through this. So he definitely it captures that in this. The whole transformation shows you how painful and terrible it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that kind of caught me, when I saw it, when I was younger, I probably didn't even think much of it, but I noticed during the transformation, he's very loud. He's
Yeah,
very loud, and the door to the apartment was open.
right. Where are the neighbors?
Where are the
Where
neighbors?
Yeah,
You
maybe they're
know,
all at work that day. I don't know,
maybe.
but
Yeah, because
um,
I just happened to glance at you can only see it in like one part of the scene where you can actually see that the apartment door is still open. Because he went out that before after he got locked
yeah.
out, he again went out and stood on the stoop, and that's when he got hissed at by the cat or the creepy girls or whatever, with the dog.
Yeah, I think the dog was then. The cat was when he was on the stoop trying to break back into the house.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the other thing that's funny how all the animals reacted to him. And then that would be my one of the things few things I would have been like, I don't know, when he's in the wolf enclosure or enclosure or whatever, they like act like he's totally natural to be there. But
like he was
even
the alpha.
right, but even then, everything
Yeah,
else we've seen werewolf wise, even wolves would react
yeah,
threateningly, to a werewolf or whatever. So
yeah,
but you got some cool, you can just see it's
yeah,
I mean the build you're right. The buildup was cool. The way they do the transformation, while it is a lot of steps, the way he cut it makes it smooth
yeah,
and
yeah,
nothing like isn't the Howling, and then he's not doing it in front of anybody. Our complaint in the Howling was why didn't the people just leave
yeah,
while you run
yeah,
away? But he's not doing it in front of anyone. So I mean that maybe that's what takes it away from us, that
yeah,
we don't have that extra person watching in horror for 30 minutes as it happens. So
yeah. I just couldn't imagine. I mean, David Naughton probably, I would say, so many hours in the makeup chair.
yeah, there's no way. Yeah.
You know, so many hours. Yeah, this is a great shot right here. You know, he's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, because the puppets they use, the makeup they apply to them, everything that they
Mm.
did is just none of it looks cheap.
Right.
That's the
And
worst part with werewolf movies is that stuff doesn't look right. It looks
yeah,
fake, and this
yeah,
one really does a good job of not.
yeah. And I like how it you can see like a little bit of moisture on
Yeah,
in this shot here. So just like before he was hot, he was sweating, and you can still see that. So,
yeah. The attention to detail is really good on these.
yeah, yeah. I love this werewolf. I love this werewolf.
Yeah, I think it's a
Uh,
fun werewolf.
yeah. My one of my favorite scenes was when with the guy in the subway
Mhm.
and he falls on the escalator and he's like
That
looking
that's
behind
the
him.
worst part when he hits the escalator face first. I'm like, how did that not rip his face off?
I
But
know,
yeah,
yeah. Yep.
there's another
And then he
kid on the
just
escalator.
yeah, he turns on his back and you could just see like you can't see the werewolf coming at him, but you could see it in his face and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh boy, he's gonna get
And they
it."
do have that quick cut scene where he's coming from underneath the sign, and that looks really cool too.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
werewolf pops just for a second. And they did a good job. They did a very good job of jawsing it. We
Yep.
saw enough of it to think that I mean, it's not perfect, but
Mm,
it's pretty cool. And they
yeah.
did enough tricks to make us not start taking it apart in the moment.
Yep. Yeah. This must be the
Yeah, this is
team.
the yeah. I think the guy in front is Rick
This
Baker,
guy
and then
here.
these are some of the assistants. Now, as we know, part of his assistants are over on the Howling, and they're
Yep.
doing their thing. So he doesn't
Yep.
even have his full staff there.
Yeah.
And so we have really cool werewolf. We have a really weird dream sequence with zombie monsters, or not
Yeah.
zombie. Well, they're kind of zombie, but zombie demons,
Nazi.
Nazis
Yeah.
killing people. We have, um,
Jack.
yeah,
The dead people.
and apparently he was always in makeup except for in the theater at the end. That's a puppet, and he just voices it.
Oh,
But
okay.
and that's in shadow, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But all of them
Really?
are really cool.
I couldn't even, I didn't even think for a second that that wasn't him in makeup.
Oh yeah, I didn't think it at the time until
Yeah.
I read it in a note. I was looking at stuff after the fact just to see, because I didn't think about doing our 10 questions. I was trying to dig up some dirt.
Yeah.
Um,
So I gotta tell you something that's pretty funny. Um, so these Nazi monsters that were in the
mhm,
dream sequence. So watching it as a child, you know how they had some of them had guns.
yeah.
Um, well, my brother was talking about the scene with the Uzis, right? So for the longest time, I thought the monsters were Uzis.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Well, that's cool. That's a good name for him too, because it would
Yeah,
definitely work.
because I didn't know what an Uzi was,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
I mean I do now, but back then I could have sworn that the name for these monsters were Uzis.
It's a
So
good name.
yeah,
We'll have to do something
yeah,
with that, right?
yep. So
Um,
I just was like, every time I see that, I'm like, oh, they're the Uzis.
and then there's a lot of classic 80s hair there too, early
Oh
80s
yeah,
hair. So
oh yeah, yep. I'm just expecting what's his name to come running through in his tidy whities from Amityville.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there's Uzi. Yep, there's him
Yeah,
in
there's
the
the
in the
wolves, and they're
wolves.
totally chill. And I just
Yeah,
think they wouldn't be, but it's a cool scene because then
yeah.
it also kind of puts in your head, the where. Well, we already know that, but
A
um,
naked American man
I
stole
know.
my
And then,
balloons.
so that is that I died laughing when that kid said that. I'd forgotten about him, just how specific and British he was when he was doing that. And
Yeah. I'm who are you? I'm a balloon thief.
yeah, that was creepy too. And he's like, "Come closer, let me show you," and all that. It's like, oh man.
Yeah. Red
So
flags, red flags. Where's your mommy?
yeah. But
But
that kid, didn't that kid look like Damien though from The Omen?
yeah, he
So
did.
they did. I don't know. I wonder if that was in there just as a nod,
Yeah.
but yeah, he came across as very creepy too. The kid did
Yeah.
in his own little way.
Yeah. One thing though, another thing that stuck out to me was how agile David was
Hmm.
to climb out of this enclosure through this and not hurt himself because obviously you could see that the werewolf must have ripped down the fencing to get in
Yeah,
there. Um, but here's David, this random college kid. He's very agile to climb up and get out and
maybe that was part of because he didn't heal as quickly as they usually do in the werewolf movies. So maybe that's the gift that he got was the
yeah,
ability to kind of climb around and be a little more dexterous or whatever.
yeah, yeah. But you could definitely tell it was the 80s because he was because he was naked, completely naked, and he just had his hand over himself, but you could get little glimpses and you're like, oh, that would totally be like rated R nowadays, just for that. And then the great scene where he's standing there in that coat.
Yeah, it steals the lady's coat, throws it on. I just thought it was funny. It just,
Yeah,
it's that little bit of silliness that makes sense for the story,
yeah,
and the character. Another glimpse into David's mind makeup. He tackled that with most people would have
yeah,
been freaking out, and I thought he did a pretty good job. Just how optimistic and how, um, you know, I guess American he is with the whole situation. So
yeah.
I
Now,
just
did
thought
you
it was a good.
notice? So did you notice when he got back to Alex's flat, he had a key?
Hmm. I didn't notice the door was locked. I just thought he walked in.
Because when he walked in, he had his hand up to the lock,
Oh, okay.
turning, and then he had his other hand on the doorknob, opening the door. And I'm like,
Weird.
how did he get a key? First of all, he
Maybe.
didn't have a key because he locked himself out.
Yeah.
And then second of all, he was, naked. So he left all his clothes in the flat because he changed,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a weird thing.
Yeah. I noticed that it's only on for a second, but when he's coming in to her apartment, he's got like the key
Hmm.
up in the lock.
And he's buzzing too. When he gets in there, he's best he's ever
He's
felt. He's practically, I mean, he's high as a kite just off
yeah,
of the situation.
yeah, he's
And
like bouncing around. This is the best I've ever felt, he says. You know, what's that from? Eating all that red meat or
yeah, I know, right? And that was a good thing too. They didn't pussyfoot around it, man. He turns into a werewolf and he goes through and kills 6 people
yep.
that first night. It's not we're
Hmm.
not doing a slow burn here. And that's how it should be, because you would think if he's as an animal, as a beast like that, trapped in that kind of environment, he would definitely be going
Yeah.
after people.
Yeah. I just and I like the scene where he's trying to get himself arrested.
Yeah, that's funny too.
Yep. He's calling the queen all kinds of names and stuff like that. And
Yeah. And they're like, careful, you're gonna get arrested. And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get done. Let's go,
yeah.
They finally drag him away. But
Yep. And then he runs off and ends up in the theater with Jack, the walking meatloaf.
yeah, I just figured to throw that in there. That's when he's in the hospital.
Yep.
Now there is a scene that was cut, I read about, where, because when he comes in, he takes some toast and he scoops it in the egg and he eats
Hmm.
it. In the cut scene, it falls out through the hole in the neck.
Oh, that would
But
have been so
I
cool.
know there was like 6 or 7 scenes that the Landis took out to secure the rating. He was, the R rating.
Mm,
And then he says the article said that he regretted doing it. But I can definitely, in 81, that may have been pushing it. You know what I mean? So to just get
yeah.
the movie made, and it
Yeah,
took him
because you
forever
can
to get the money to make the movie, so he's probably not gonna
he didn't
push
want to
any
risk it.
boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can see that he's mauled and
Hmm.
clearly, he's cut open, but it's not that gruesome.
Right.
But I think seeing the food would just let you know, oh, there's nothing there,
Yeah.
so it's gonna come pop right out. And this kind of looks more vampire-ish to
Right. That's
me.
what I included it, because I was like, this was in his dream when he turns into this, but it's like this doesn't make me think of a werewolf at all. It's just a
Yeah,
monster. Maybe that's what he's thinking in the dream, that he's becoming a monster. But
yeah,
it the dream sequences didn't always make a ton of sense, and I assume that's on purpose because they're dream sequences and that happens a lot. But
yeah,
um, we had the Nazis, and then we have this, and we have him running just through the woods, sometimes naked, sometimes dressed completely like he was on the
yeah,
moor. But yeah, I just thought, a little extra thing here. But
yeah,
yeah, 100%, this is a vampire, right? So
yeah, yeah, for sure. And there's the couple that he killed, and then the guy that
that's the guy from
this
the
the subway.
escalator. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very bitter.
Yes. As deservingly, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
he
these
was
two
fucking,
were just like,
yeah, they were
we're
into it.
dead. Yeah,
Yeah. Stuff happens, and that's just what happened that night. So,
yeah, and they're trying to be all helpful. Oh, you could get a gun,
right.
or
Listing all the different ways he can kill himself and all
yeah,
that. So I thought it was a fun scene.
yeah,
Especially because it's taking place in a porno house. And another
yeah.
interesting story was when he wrote it, it's in a cartoon house, because
Oh,
apparently at the time when he wrote it, that's what they had there. But by
mhm.
the time they got the money and the ability to film, that whole district had shifted into this
Shifted.
adult. And so then he had to change it into a porno house instead of
Yeah,
having it be a cartoon house, which
yeah.
that
It
would have
was
been even more surreal if they had cartoons running.
Yeah,
But he
and it was
wanted it to match what London was like at the time of the filming. So
yeah, and it was kind of weird when he was starting to change and that one guy was just standing there watching him. I'm like, you know what?
yeah, that was creepy.
I'm
There,
like,
yeah,
that's creepier than him changing into a werewolf in a porno
right.
theater, you know?
And then yeah, and then on the movie poster, which is a great movie poster, but apparently a lot of people were thrown off because it starts with from the director of Animal House. And so a lot of people went to see this movie thinking it was 100% a comedy
Oh yeah, it was
and didn't
definitely not.
realize. And this would have been shocking in 81, I think, to go and
Yeah,
see all that. And they, like we said earlier, it doesn't take long for the attack to happen. And it's pretty brutal
yeah,
for the time period.
yeah. And we have the next one. This is kind of,
I
it
don't
looks, yeah,
I don't like it.
I don't either. It looks like a
And
cat to me.
right. And this is the poster that was on Tubi when I went to go watch it, with commercials. And and I thought this is that modern cover slash movie poster look that all the big places use that
Yeah,
I'm not always in love with. I'd
yeah,
rather have it be a throwback. Let's see some classic. But I included it because I disliked it so much. I was just like, I guess I get it, but at the same time, I wish they would never have done this.
yeah. And
I like this. This is cool.
this one's cool. Yeah,
I don't know what it is. This is kind of like when Brad posts alternate movie posters on Facebook.
yeah,
It has that vibe to it, And maybe
yeah,
this is a movie poster for when it came out or was re-released or something. But to
yeah,
me, this is like it has the vibe of the original Wolfman, that kind of stuff, but also the modern take with the neon lights and the
yeah.
signs in the
I'm kind
background.
of,
But I love this one.
I was trying to see because I couldn't quite read the second line of red text there. I thought maybe it was in a different language because I'm like, maybe this is a poster for a different country where it came out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's Fujifilm though, but I saw that on the
Yeah,
on
yeah,
advertise, when they had the advertisements on the neons when they were in London. So
yeah.
now
And
this
this one's,
is a foreign
yeah,
because it's in, I don't know,
German, it looks.
yeah. And so what do? They make it look like it's a comedy, like
Yeah,
like a silly American werewolf kind of
because
thing.
he's wearing this like dress. It looks like a dress, kind of.
Yeah.
And this guy looks like he's laughing.
Uh-huh.
And then
And
he's
not
got the one
Yeah,
leg.
one leg train, but it also has Kentucky Fried Movie and Blues Brothers listed in the credits.
Oh,
So
yeah,
why
oh, yeah,
again, you would have to think that this is a straight up comedy.
yeah,
So I just included this one just because I ran across it and I thought, well, this is a terrible poster for the movie
yeah,
itself, but I could definitely kind of get that vibe of what somebody might be doing.
yeah. And then I think this is a really cool poster.
Yeah, I like this one. I don't know what it's for though. Maybe it was
Yeah,
one of the videos
yeah,
or a collector set, but I thought it did a good job of capturing some of the weirdness of the dreams, but also giving us a little glimpse of the
the
werewolf.
werewolf. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I really like this one. This would make a pretty cool book cover,
yeah,
I
I could
think.
definitely see it as a book cover.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely just trying to see if it shows. Sometimes it will say stuff, but
Yeah,
I can't.
and it could just
Doesn't.
be somebody's interpretation. That
Yeah,
happens a lot too. So, but
yeah. As cool as I think it is, I think people would get confused because there's this creature here and they'd probably
yeah,
expect more of this creature than the werewolf, you know?
yeah,
Maybe if they had the werewolf more forward and had like this scene like playing in the background, like
yeah.
a
I know.
shadow
Yeah,
or something. But I do it is pretty cool. And even though it's black and white, it's really striking
yeah,
to me. Because when I was
yeah. I
going through the
agree.
pictures when you sent them to me, I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
It stood out when I was flipping through and saving certain the different ones and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
most of them are just a take on the first cover.
Yep. Yeah, but
And
I'm really glad we watched it. It had been a
yeah,
long time since I had seen it. And I forgot how good of a movie it was. And let's talk about the soundtrack.
yeah, yeah. It
Um,
had that vibe, and I think because he's the director, producer of so many of those big comedies at the end of
mhm,
the '70s and into the '80s, it has the same kind of soundtrack vibe.
yeah.
Um, that you
Yeah,
would
I
got
remember.
from Animal House and Blues Brothers and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
it was a
yeah, it
great
was.
time. Yeah, the music was really good.
Yeah, and I will forever equate Creedence Clearwater Revival
Yeah,
and American Werewolf in London. No matter what song of theirs I'm listening to, I'm always going to think of American Werewolf in London.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it definitely, and I mean, part of the reason we watched it was to kind of wash the taste out of our eyes or mouth, however you want to word it, with what was it? Shapeshifter,
Shapeshifter, yeah.
which the episode's already out, and everybody can see what we thought of that book, and then we can get a nice clean slate as we jump into Howling 3 to finish off the werewolves, and then dive into some other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And this week we're get back to doing our suggestions of the not Stephen King book of the week, and we're gonna have The Screaming Tree by Patrick C. Harris, the third, or Harrison the third. We'll have a link down there for you. It's a fun one because I think you can only get the paperback on his Etsy store
Okay.
or in person, and so it's on Godless. It's on Amazon ebook, I think, and then you go to his Etsy store to get this. And he's only got I think 100. I
Oh,
want to say
really?
it's yeah, I've got number 20 of 100 copies. So
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know if he's going to keep doing it or if he's only going to put out 100, but it's just a quick story. It was in something else, and he's when he gets the rights back to him, he sometimes releases stuff in these little books, and they're really cool. I want to say it's the same size as a 100% match. Size
Okay.
wise, that one's thicker, but he's cornered the market on these cool the smaller books.
Pocketbooks.
Yeah.
I'll call them pocketbooks.
So everybody needs to run out and grab a copy. Like I said, I don't know if he'll be doing a second volume, but they're reasonably priced on Etsy. So
I'll have to check that out because if they're a limited edition, I definitely want one.
yeah, I know, right? So I was lucky enough to get one at an event after AuthorCon because he just got some in,
Oh yeah, that
and
other
the
the
library event.
the library event that you had gone to. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a fun
nice.
experience. So, but yeah, it was cool to be able to grab one of these. So
Yeah,
everybody should go check it out.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us again. As Eric said, we'll be jumping into Howling 3 for our next episode, and then we'll be bringing you some different things, probably hit some classics like Dracula, Frankenstein, Psycho, that kind of thing. So stay
Yeah,
tuned.
take it easy.